Good morning. We're now going to proceed to the consideration of a proposed change in our bylaws. It's a proposal that comes from the Illinois South Conference. It pertains to the frequency of the synods. And I see we have a point at microphone number 5.
Yes, good morning. I'm Martha Jacobs of the New York Conference. And while I celebrate all 3 gentlemen who have been selected to serve our church, I am greatly troubled that there are no women who were included in that, and I would urge the new collegium to please look and see why it is that women did not self-select to apply for these positions, and why there was no discussion about women not being included. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. The proposal that we'll be considering, as I said, it pertains to the frequency with which the synod will be held, and the proposal in its entirety says that an amendment to Bylaw 181, quote, regular meetings of the General Synod shall be held every 3 or 4 years, close quote. The Business Committee referred this to Committee number 13, and the chairman of that committee, Rich Flickman, is here, and I'd ask him to report on the work of that committee.
Good morning, church. Are you ready to talk about bylaws? We were lucky enough to be number 13. The proposed bylaw was posted on the website along with the other business of the General Synod. I want to recognize and thank the members of Committee 13 who worked on this. If they're here, they can stand. It was a very lively debate, as you will hear. Thank you, committee, for your commitment throughout our discussion. As I said, lively debate, both Friday afternoon during the educational intensive and again on Sunday morning, where we recapped some of the Friday comments for those who weren't able to arrive in time. And a great variety of questions were raised if you were participating. And of course, this is the UCC, so the comments were quite extensive. Many of those present felt that there was a serious shortage of information provided for this significant of decision, and there were many who acknowledged the tension within themselves between the values and benefits of coming to General Synod and the financial factors that are raised for this discussion. At least one person stated that their thinking had changed during our committee session, so this is a very fluid thing. And addressing the financial situation, a person stated, there is no shortage of money for work in the church. We just have to ask. A direction for action developed, and it came in 3 parts. First, the proposal is presented for your consideration to add an effective date following the close of General Synod 29 in 2013. This is important. Bylaw changes become effective immediately unless there's an effective date. We already have a commitment and contracts to go to Long Beach, and if we don't put an effective date after Long Beach, we have some issues. The second part, coming from the committee, while the committee was not at all opposed to change, it was unable to support this proposed bylaw at this time. And the third component is that the Executive Council is asked to create an active working group to be formed to fully study all aspects of Synod issues and the variety of options to reallocate financial resources to meet the communication needs and maintain the community within this denomination. Many ideas that might be included were raised and recorded and collected, and they are being shared with the Executive Council. And this working group to be formed, we're asking that they report back to General Synod 29 in Long Beach. On behalf of Committee 13 and pursuant to paragraph 75 of the Constitution, I move that the 28th General Synod vote on the proposed bylaw with the addition of an effective date at the close of General Synod 29 in 2013.
All right, and just to clarify then, the proposed bylaw that you will be voting on does have an effective date added to it by the committee. And that slide was up previously, but it is the regular meetings of the General Synod shall be held every 3 or 4 years effective after General Synod 29 in 2013. That is the proposal that you will be voting on soon. Mr. Chairman, will you comment further?
Yes, you've heard an extensive comments about the committee, so I'll be brief. The committee recommends a vote to defeat the proposed bylaw amendment. This recommendation is based on the need for much more information to understand the direct impact of the proposal and a full study to talk about related and implications and unintended consequences that may not have been already considered. Also, that any study to review the communication needs a sense of the community of the UCC, and for these reasons, the committee recommends a vote of no on this bylaw change. Mr. Moderator.
All right, so before you now is the proposal that was submitted by the conference with the addition of that effective date. And again, that's appropriate and in order to have that effective date, because the Constitution provides that unless something like that is in there, the change in the bylaw, if it passes, would become effective immediately. So at this point, the motion is on the floor. If there are those who would like to speak either for or against the bylaw as now presented, please go to a red or a green microphone. Yes, sir.
Executive Council Delegate from the Missouri Mid-South Conference. I was a member of Committee 13. I'd like to thank them for their faithful and thoughtful study of this issue. I'd encourage the body to vote yes on the committee recommendation, which is essentially a no vote to the amendment. And so this will keep Synod at every 2 years for now, but will also create the study group.
Yeah, let me just clarify that the proposal that will be before them is on the actual proposed amendment. So I think you want to reverse what you're saying there. If the committee's recommendation is that there to be a vote on this proposal, it'll be the proposal that is voted on. So if you are encouraging people to vote against the change in the bylaw, you'd be asking them to vote no then.
Okay. So may I stay at this microphone and make my point, or do you need me to move?
Please continue.
So my sense is that the majority of the committee was convinced that the Synod is probably not sustainable in its current form, but that going to every 3 to 4 years was essentially a knee-jerk response that would not adequately resolve all the issues and would also create problems with delegate cycles in terms and board member terms. Also, with a new unified governance structure, it is critical that Synod be held during the transition and the early years of the United Church Board to allow for proper feedback and guidance. Further study of the Synod process will provide the best opportunity to address the concerns that prompted this amendment proposal while preserving the features of Synod that bring us together every session. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Are there other speakers at microphone number 4?
My name's Annalise Washburn. I'm a youth delegate and a member of the Youth Roundtable from Southern California Nevada Conference. And on the off years of Synod, there are youth events. And so if we changed the frequency of Synod, those youth events might go away, and they are just as important as this event is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, going to microphone number 2.
Yes, hello. Josh Privet, young adult delegate with Missouri Mid-South Conference. Just to speak to the previous concern, I want to say that the change in frequency of Synod would not affect youth events at all, so that should not really be considered as a concern. But something I do want to bring up in support of this is that every time we meet as Synod, just think about all of the environmental or social implications of meeting. Think of how much paper is used. Think of how much electricity is used. Think of even the tablecloths on the tables. Just those will probably more than likely be thrown away. And so all of the giveaways, all the travel expenses, all of the hotel, electricity, everything used, there's huge social implications for meeting this often, in addition to financial implications. And while I recognize that getting together we do amazing work, I also want to recognize that that amazing work can be done outside of Synod, that can be done locally and can be done even more smaller in regions or conferences. And so I just want to bring up that point that meeting together in this large of a setting has large environmental and social implications. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And at the red microphone over here.
Good morning. Ken Wells from Iowa. This morning in our Iowa caucus, they opened with the scripture reading from Luke with the expensive ointment being presented to Jesus' feet. Synod is an expensive ointment, but it is how we anoint our youth and the first coming to Synod to go out and share the joy that this conference represents. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And back to the number 2 mic.
Hello, my name is Andrew Warner. I'm a JWM delegate from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I thank you for the privilege of attending Synod, the privilege of making new friends, the privilege of worshiping with you, the privilege of discussing, debating, and appealing moderator decisions. Coming to Synod is a privileged experience, but the United Church of Christ taught me to question privilege, white privilege, male privilege, class privilege. And so now I question Synod privilege. Synod privilege is the power of 1/100% to command the resources of the church. Imagine the power, the small fraction of a church spending $2 million. The national church gets smaller each year, but Synod demands more and more resources and funds. Synod privilege. The resolution challenges us to give up our Synod privilege for the good of the whole church. Imagine what would be possible if we gave up our control of this money. 100 seminarians fully funded for a year of education, 30 new church start pastors paid for a year, 12 months without our hard-working women and men who serve us in the national setting not sent to the unemployment line. Imagine what missional work we could do if we gave up some of our Synod privilege. We would still meet, we would still be friends, we would still have a chance for parliamentarian maneuvers every 4 years. Less Synod privilege, more church mission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, to the red mic, and could you just hold the number up so I can, 4?
3.
3. All right, going to number 3, please.
Good morning, Christopher Jenkins, Massachusetts Conference. I actually believe that some of the points made by the gentleman who spoke previously are arguments in favor of keeping Synod as it is. The less frequent, the most popular, and I mean that in terms of demographically representative body meets or is elected, the less democracy there is in a body, and this is something that's discussed when constitutions are written for states and nations. How often do we elect? How often do we sit? And generally speaking, democracy to some extent diminishes the more gap there is between sessions and between election. So we'd be giving more to our Unified Governance Board, which is a debatable proposition, but just to point that out. I don't believe that things like budgets and decisions of the national church should go longer than 2 years without the consent of the entire body. And it's not just a Synod privilege, it is that we are the entire body, the highest body of the church, representing the entire church as only we can. And the other thing, just as a philosophical pet peeve of mine when it comes to governing documents, if this is reconsidered at some point, please choose whether it is 3 or 4 years. Do not put that kind of wiggle room in a governing document. People need to know what to expect. Maybe it should be 3, maybe 4 down the line. I'd still prefer keeping it at 2. But at very least, don't try to put that kind of uncertainty into one of our basic foundational and governing documents. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a procedural matter at microphone number 5.
William Field, Central Atlantic Conference. I have a question about what we're voting on.
Yes.
The proposal from the committee was to vote that we reject this and that we go and ask the Executive Council to form a study group. Are we voting to agree with their proposal, or are we voting simply on the amendment?
Right, good question. The only thing that you'll be voting on is the proposed amendment to the bylaws with the addition of that effective date. The report of the committee also included a recommendation to the Executive Council that it conduct a study and whatnot. That is a recommendation being made by the committee to the Executive Council. It's not something that's going to be voted on here. The only thing that you'll be voting upon is the proposal to amend Bylaw 181. Is there another procedural matter?
Okay. Bethany Joy Lang, Michigan Conference. Call the question.
All right, we have heard 2 pro and 2 against. The question has now been called. That All right, is there a second to call the question? All right, the question has been called, and we will now vote on whether to end debate and to proceed to the vote on the main motion, which is the amendment as stated. So if you are in favor of calling the question, ending debate, you'll want to vote number 1. If you are opposed to that and will want to have more discussion or debate on this issue, you'll be pressing button number 2, and if you want to abstain, you'll be pressing number 3. Voting is now open. There's 8 seconds left. All right, the voting is now closed. This vote had to carry by 2/3. It does carry by 2/3, and so debate is now concluded on this issue. We'll now proceed to a vote on the main motion. Again, the committee recommended a no vote and recommended that the Executive Council take certain action, but the matter before you now is the vote on the proposal as it has been presented by the conference, and that is the amendment to Bylaw 181 that now appears on the screen. So if you do want to amend our bylaws in this manner, you'll be pressing number 1. If you're opposed to amending the bylaw in that manner, you'll be pressing number 2. And if you're abstaining, you'll be pressing number 3. The matter is now open for voting. There's 15 seconds left for your voting. All right. But the motion clearly fails, and the amendment, proposed amendment, is defeated. All right.